In this presentation, I will be reviewing the San Pedro Tonconsu financial statement for the year ended 31st March 2023. I will be answering 6 assignment questions based on a case study that was presented to us from the San Pedro Tonconsu financial statements review. The questions are based on IPSAS disclosures, statements, and deficiencies. These are the questions that I'll be covering on the sequence. The first question is the San Pedro Town Council required to submit a budget in accordance with IPSAS? Belize law does not mandate IPSAS for town councils. The San Pedro Town Council prepared financial statements using IFRS for small medium enterprises. The IPSAS adoption could be voluntary or for transparency to investors. The San Pedro Town Council went based on the Town Councils Act that requires budgets and accounts, not IPSAS specifically. The second question is components of the statement of financial position presented by San Pedro Town Council. These are the components presented by the Town Council on its statement of financial position. They presented assets as non-current and current with property, plant and equipment, investment property, intangibles, receivables, and cash as their assets. Under their liabilities, they presented the borrowings, payables, severance, and unearned revenues, which is equivalent to their net asset, which gives them the accumulated surplus or deficit. These are the components of the statement of performance the San Pedro Town Council should present under the IPSAS. The IPSAS 1 requires that the statements of financial performance show a clear split of revenue and expenses and sub-classifications either by nature or function that are most relevant. The IPSAS requires a budget comparison when a legal budget exists. And the classifications are based on revenues that bring under them the taxes, the fee services, grants, and rentals. Expenses are mainly based on employee costs, depreciation, finance, impairment, operating costs. After that, it will give you an operating result, which will be the surplus or the deficit for the period. Statement of activities could be reorganized into the IPSAS categories. For example, this is an example of a remapping. The San Pedro Town Council statement of activities reclassified to IPSAS format would be an example would be property tax under taxation revenue. That would fall under the revenue, and then the trade license under the regulatory fees. Disclosure notes San Pedro Town Council did present correctly and where they appear. The San Pedro Town Council includes many disclosures that matches IPSAS 1's normal expectation. These are positive points. They provided many disclosures aligned to the practice, to the IPSA practice. This is what they did well. For example, the accounting policies disclosed. They clearly set out measures, basis, going concerns, and the property, plant, and equipment policy, the revenue recognition provisions, severance, impairment approaches. They did the borrowing details, Related party disclosure and commitments and subsequent events. The borrowings based on detail on each loan, they detailed everything, current and non-current portions, consistent with IPSAS. Deficiencies in application of accrual accounting and IPSAS 1 detailed. High priority deficiency that are the most important compared with IPSAS expectations. The major deficiency that were seen was that 1. No statement of compliance with IPSAS. The San Pedro Town Council statement shows compliance with IFRS for small medium enterprises, not IPSAS. The IPSAS 1 requires an explicit statement of compliance if a reporting entity claims IPSAS compliance. If the council wishes to claim IPSAS compliance, it must prepare under IPSAS and include the standard compliance statement. If aiming for IPSAS compliance in future, they should prepare transition notes, restate comparatives if required, and include the IPSAS compliance disclosure per IPSAS 1. Secondly, it's the missing budget to actual comparison. The absence of budget to actual comparison statement. IPSAS promotes presentation of the comparison of budget and actual amounts for the same period where a legally adopted budget exists. As supplies do not include a statement of comparison, this is a material omission from an accountability perspective for public sector entities. A suggestion could be that they could add a statement of comparison of budget and actual amounts and reconciled it to surplus or deficit and accompanied by explanation of material variances. Number 3 is the inconsistent policy wording, the cost versus revaluation. It had many internal inconsistency in accounting policy statement. The financial statement text contains contradictory statements at one point. The financials are described as prepared on a historical cost basis. Elsewhere, it states that the land and building are stated at revalued amount and that independent valuations were applied retroactively. IFRS for small-medium enterprises has specific rules regarding revaluation and measurement. The combination of historical costs and revalued amounts without clear basis is a presentation of inconsistency. A suggestion could be that they could clarify the measurement basis for each asset class. Example, land is carried at a revalued amount. Other classes are at cost less depreciation. Number 4 is a prior period adjustments not fully explained. Large prior period adjustments and reclassifications are shown in the statement of activities and reclassification derecognition items in the notes. The IPSAS IFRS require explanation of the nature of prior period errors and their quantitative effects, and any restated comparatives with reconciliation of previously reported amounts to revised amounts. The provided notes references the adjustment but not fully quantify or narrate the root causes and reconciliation in any easily traceable manner for users. 5 would be the investment property versus the property, plant, and equipment clarity. Classification and accounting for investment property versus property, plant, and equipment. There was a reclassification, derecognition. It appears some land that was previously classified as investment property was derecognized due to transition differences. Public entities must clearly explain the basis for classification between investment property and property, plant, and equipment. Example, held for income slash capital appreciation versus held for service potential. IPSAS requires clear disclosure of measurement model and movements. The transition explanation is present but could be clearer in mapping to IPSAS concept. Number 6 would be bad debts expense unusually high. The bad debt recognition is a large single-year charge requiring explanation. The 2023 bad debt expense is large. The IPSCS expect disclosures of the basis for impairment of receivables and significant events behind unusual light write-offs. While the San Pedro Town Council discloses 800% policy for receivable older than 5 years, the size warrants a fuller explanation of recoverability efforts and whether receivables are subject to enforcement or structural collection changes. Bring the financial statements closer to IPSCS compliance. These are some suggested fixes. One could be to add IPSCS compliance statement if applicable. 2. Introduce budget to actual statement. 3. Clarify measurement basis per asset class. 4. Add detailed prior period error note. 5. Explain receivable impairment methodology. And 6. Expand bond covenant disclosure. This is just a brief explanation of what I explained before. Specific figures from the financial statement illustrate areas requiring better disclosure. These are the evidence presented on the case. From the financial statement, it has a bad debt expense for 7.5 million Belize dollars, borrowings for 6 million Belize dollars, and subsequent events like bonds for 28 million Belize dollars. The part in the bracket is just the citation from where the information was gathered. For inconsistency, there's supposed to be an action plan, and the action plan that I am presenting or the recommendations for the San Pedro Tongs Council to strengthen their financial reporting and transparency. My recommendations could be that they could add the budget comparison, correct policy inconsistency, expand prior period and receivable notes, provide bond covenant detail, and consider IPSAS adoption for transparency and better accountability. Just a wrap up. Some key takeaways that the San Pedro Council has strong disclosures, but several IPSAS level gaps remain. There is always room for improvement, and this is a better way how they can disclose their financial statements and give proper accountability and transparency on their financials. And the San Pedro Town Council should add budget to actual statement, clarify the property, plant, and equipment versus investment property, fully explain prior period adjustments, expand receivable disclosures, disclose bonds covenants. Thank you for your time, and these are some references where I got my information from.